So 7 months ago, I published this. And I made an assumption. Okay, so let's listen to my assumption here.
Final Fantasy might be doing that nobody else is doing. Because say for a moment that Deeds of Cruelty was filled with only things you hated. Only things you hated. I don't know what was in that patch.
I should have said this differently when this was reacted to by Zepla, assuming that the opinions she had are probably opinions people who don't publish their reactions or do their reactions live on Twitch feel. People who just watched it. What I did not make clear here was, hypothetically, let's just name a patch. Any patch. Okay?
Just assume for a moment you hated it. Okay? First of all, you tried everything out just a little bit, just like an hour or two. So it doesn't matter how much there was, because you tried it for an hour and you hated it. So, you play, like an MMO player, you play 6 to 8 hours a week. So for the first 2 weeks, you're just trying everything out.
Okay, so 6.35 is what I would like to consider for this. We got a deep dungeon, which trying for a couple hours, clearing to 30 with a group would have been great. Would have been great. Okay? Now, we got a new crafting and gathering relic, which does have a storyline to it. And to do one of those and gather your own takes about 9 hours, but let's say you just buy everything, it's a couple hours. So you're looking at easily 6 to 8 hours right out of the gate. The battle relic is 1,500 tomes. You could let those come in organically and just ignore it. But you'd need to do Hildy, which I assume is a couple hours. You then try the Lopper which is going to be short each day, but for 14 days. Give or take. So you've got all that. So you have what I'm describing here. And so you guys are saying that another content creator here on Twitch said worst patch ever as their title yesterday. I've seen a lot of people very frustrated towards this patch. So instead of the hypothetical 7 months from now where I said, you know, one day in the future, imagine this game had a bad patch cycle. I can't name a bad patch cycle. I don't know that we'll ever have a bad patch cycle in the future, hypothetically. But for now, let's plug in 6.35. You got an hour of Hildy, you got at least an hour of Deep Dungeon, you got at least an hour of Crafting Relics, you got at least an hour of Lopper Eats, so you got 4 or 5 hours of patch content, and you feel like, you know what, they didn't update Islands, they didn't update Criterion, they didn't update PvP, they didn't update MSQ, they didn't update, you know, like they didn't do a lot that you maybe wanted, so you're just hanging out.
Alright. So we have gone from 10/24 all the way into November. So somewhere in November here, you're kind of done. More content gets added in December.
All right. Fair point passed, Chris. That guy got criticized because I didn't communicate well. I'm trying to be better about it. But let's go to the MMO spreadsheet of Epic Nerdiness and put some real dates on this. So patch 6.35 released the 7th of March. The way the MMO spreadsheet of Epic Nerdiness said it would. Exactly on time, and that is because it is 56 days after the patch, exactly as the spreadsheet predicted it would be. March 7th, okay? You know that was going to get you to about March 21st on the average MMO player's amount of time to play per week. 2 weeks out of that is reasonable. The Moogle Tombstone event will start 3 days later. 3 days later. Then that is to last 29 days of casual play. Probably won't. Moogle Tombstone events have very predictable amount of loot in them. So we can already tell you with reasonable guesses what is in it. And the reason you can do that is it is predictable. So longtime veterans don't usually need a ton of stuff out of it. So you are going to gap out. If you finished all of 6.3 before 6.35, you will gap out. You've already cleared top or don't have interest in it. You've already got all your relics caught up or don't have interest in them. You already have all your jobs leveled or don't have interest in them. So you will gap out if you are solely reliant on 6.35 during 6.35. You're ignoring the previous 10 years of content because you've already done everything you want to do out of that.
So you're already getting that hyped. As that launches, keep in mind, we're already moving into live letters, hyping the next patch. So you come out of the half patch, and we go right into the live letter communicating the next patch. We get a second live
Okay.
letter.
Live letters are not game content, but they are something to talk about. So you might log in game and do something mindless because you're excited about what's upcoming. Fair enough. It gives you a new breath of energy to go in and do another relic or go back into PvP knowing that something new is coming for PvP. Fair enough. When are the live letters? The next live letter is on the 24th of this month. So if we pan back over, the Moogle Tombstone event of Mendacity will be next month, end of next month. You will 100% gap out. You will have almost a month of downtime between when you will finish 6.35 content and when the Moogle Tombstone event will start. But the live letter will be in between. There will be a second live letter 11 days before the patch during the hunt for Mendacity. Remember, NA FanFest is coming up in July, which means we're about to see a whole lot of speculation kick up because it's fun to speculate and guess right before you get the answer.
You only have like 4 weeks per patch to hate it. It does not matter if you hate everything here because you got this. It does.
Okay. So past me that was seen as not communicating well said you have about 4 weeks of downtime. So let's pan back over and check the math. So I said, I think there's 1 to 2 weeks here. That means that if you did not like the content based on the Lodestone patch notes that launched on March 7th of 2023, that you would be done with that content, having given it an honest try by the 21st of March. Not everybody logs in patch day. You log in 2 weekends. You're done by the time the patch is 2 weeks old. Remember, with the 0.8 or whatever, we're looking at unlocking Savage. So for some people, there's more coming, but for most, if you're done, you're done. So you have from the 21st of March to the 24th of April of dead time. So the 21st to the 28th is 1 week. April 4th, April 11th, April 18th to the 24th. I was a little wrong. It is 5 weeks of downtime here for somebody that did not enjoy what came in patch 6.35 and was already done with everything they wanted to do from the last 10 years and wants to play Final Fantasy XIV, but because of both of those being true, finds themselves not able to.
You hate everything here because we're already talking about this. Are there games with good content? Yeah, Guild Wars has good content. World of Warcraft has some good content. Is it passion? Oh, I don't think anybody's working in the gaming industry for what they make and how hard they work because they are like, yeah, I don't know, I just had to have a job, you know? I think passion is present all over the gaming industry. Is it?
Cool. Well, that was the prediction 6 months ago, and I just wanted to kind of loop back on that and use that as a guess of like what is happening with 6.35 with this frustration, and what really is there to lose. Because what's wrong with 6.35 is the quantity of time it will take you to clear it, not necessarily that any one part of it is just terrible or buggy or doesn't work or was not delivered on plan. Everything showed up in game that they said would. It's all here. But now I don't have to hypothetically point at any random patch and use it as a hypothetical where you may have said, I liked that one. What I was trying to say was, what if any patch, a hypothetical patch, was one that frustrated you? And now that we're in a patch where some people are frustrated, it's a good time to loop back. I think one of the areas that Final Fantasy removes content, like something to do, is that our gearing and rotation system is so simple that you are either below the skill floor or above the skill floor. And the gap from the skill floor to the skill ceiling is very, very narrow. So as soon as you have the basics of it, a rotation down, you're good enough for content, with the exception of Savage, and not even all Savage. Extreme, definitely not all extremes. Ultimate, which is basically 3 versions of the same idea. And then Ranked Crystalline Conflict, which is a different combat system. We're all playing every job the same way. Like, I'm playing Warrior, and I'm either playing Warrior worse than other Warriors or better. I'm not playing it different. Because there's only one way to play Warrior, the correct way. And so because of that, you have a game that's going to give up on what a lot of games make as content. Right? The act of finding the best build, perfecting the best build, that it's ever changing every patch cycle, what the best build is something that allows like action RPGs, games like Path of Exile and Diablo to thrive, is build quality. It allows games that have a little more nuance, like Destiny or World of Warcraft, to have a bunch of debate every time they make a gearing change or a class action change. But Final Fantasy keeps itself away from all that. And like that means we don't have any of the negatives. There's a lot of drama and frustration when you find out that the way you like playing is bad. But what that means is, by giving that up, you've got to put something else in. And historically, that's been grinds. We've had a lot of grind fests in this game. Do this, now that we know you're just doing the same thing, can you do the same thing for 6 billion hours? Remember, at this point, last expansion, we had Ishgard Restoration, we had Bozja Zadnor, we had, all this other stuff. Bicolor gemstones were still new. So, like, we had all this other stuff going on that was very, 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 very grindy. But now, we have all the same simplification that Shadowbringers came in and basically universally added tank stance to every version of the game. Like, every element of the game got that treatment, where it was given a wildly fast experience grind and a very simple to understand entry point into what your skills do. And so they made it very easy to get into the game and then work on all these grinds. Now we're at that same ease of access without the grinds, and it feels a little bit empty for anybody that doesn't have a goal in front of them. I have goals in front of me, and so like I'm finding the game very, very rewarding, but it's becoming a very sandbox experience where if you're not defining your experience, I don't know why you're logging in. And that's not a criticism, I just literally am asking. And that's a change. There are games that live like that. There are games that their entire life cycle, from the day they release to the day that their servers shut down, you have to define your own experience. Final Fantasy has not historically been one of those games. Are people complaining about there not being a dedicated relic grind? In general, I'm seeing some frustration in the community that 635, that they logged in and don't know what to do. If the relic was grindier, it would answer that question. But like when I listen to the frustrations, the frustrations are all over the place. But when I'm listening to the frustrations, the thing that threads them all together, from my perspective, is that people logged into 635 or looked at the 635 patch notes. They don't have anything to do. And as a result of that, they're either frustrated at the game, or they're happily taking a break from the game, or they are mad that a particular piece of content didn't answer that question for them. Right? I wish the relic grind was grindier. I wish Savage was unlocked so that I could go into Omega with a different role. Right? This, that, the other thing. What they're looking for is a goal. And so if you're not able to find one, the general advice has been, we'll take a break. And when World of Warcraft players came over to 14 en masse and said, I'm taking a break from WoW, people said, well, yeah, you should. You should. I think that's healthy. And they said, well, I don't want to take a break. I'm forced to take a break because of ethical stances against the company, or because of the way they've been managing a piece of content I care about, or whatever. And 14 players were like, well, that's good. If they're not making content for you, you should take a break. And I think for some of those players, they're now understanding why that's frustrating. I didn't say I wanted to take a break. I said I have to take a break. Right? I left a job because they stopped paying me. I left a job because people there are bullying me. I didn't want to leave the job. I liked the work. But things outside of that have made it not tenable. So I think people in 14 have historically said, I take a break when I want to take a break, but the game is still good. And I play the game when I want to play the game because the game is still good. And for the first time, they're realizing there might be a day that you want to play 14 and you don't really know how. or you don't really feel like it. And you're like, how can you want to play something and not feel like it? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, feelings are confusing. We're weird, hypocritical, self-conflicting creatures. We are. And so that's where I think people are frustrated with 635, is the relic grind is very lackluster day and date. It'll age really well when it's a poetics relic, but day and date, why? Deep Dungeon may not be your thing. Now, for the people that have wanted one, I think they're having a lot of fun in it. And so this is something that happens in WoW all the time. I want to play WoW, but because of choices of the devs, there's either not a patch when I wanted a patch, or there's not support for a system that I wanted support for, or they just made a change that forced me into content I don't like. And I want to play WoW, just not the way that the game is making me play. And that's a friction point. Guild Wars. It's a game that says, do whatever you want. And you're like, cool, what are my options? And they're like, whatever you want. And you're like, cool, can you just tell me like a few of my options? They're like, whatever you want. And if any of you have ever tried to go out to dinner with a friend that will not answer the question, that's very frustrating. What do you want to eat? Anything's fine. Okay, well, what's good around here? Anything's fine. Okay, well, do you have like food around your house? Anything's fine. And Guild Wars runs into that a lot. It's very easy to get lost. A sandbox with no direction is a desert. Guild Wars is a vast sandbox, and it can look a lot like a desert if you don't have goals. I love Guild Wars 2. I have goals in Guild Wars 2. And behind those goals, I have other goals. Because without goals, I would just get lost. Final Fantasy has historically been very, very clear. Look at the patch notes, scrape the things that you don't like off the top, do the rest. Done. What do you do when you're done? You work on the backlog of everything that's released from 2013 that you also liked but didn't make time for. But in Endwalker, people are getting to the point where they've done all that. They've hit Omni 90. They've cleared all those old raid side stories. They've done the amount of PvP and relic grinds they want to do. So that's where they're running into frustration. It's a frustration that's incredibly common in MMORPGs. Final Fantasy just slammed us with a ton of content in Stormblood, and a lot of people weren't into the story, so they were taking breaks from the game. So they let all this content build up. Shadowbringers was amazing, brought a lot of people into the game. They all got to work through the backlog of Stormblood, Heavensward, ARR. Oh my god, I love this game, and when there's not Shadowbringers content to do, I have all this backlog. And they burned all that up. Then they all sped cleared Endwalker, because why not? And now they're here. And the patches have been very targeted. The amount of content, if you're truly full clearing, if you are going to solo clear Deep Dungeon, get all the weapons, you are going to get all the relics this expansion, all the crafting and gathering relics this expansion, do all your own gathering for those. You're clearing all the savages, all the ultimates. The amount of content in Endwalker is large, but what they've done is they've made a lot of it very, very, very optional. And they've taken Criterion and Variant and all these things, and they've said, here's a big system, and it's totally isolated. Criterion requires gear, but does not feed gear back in. So it pulls from the battle system, but it gives nothing back. So you have all these systems, but they're so isolated that if you ever do not have a reason to put your boat out in this archipelago and navigate to a different island, then you can feel like you've done everything on the islands you're on, and that there's nothing left. And that's a very frustrating feeling. It's a very valid feeling. So I think that's where people are. It's not where I am, because like I said, I have goals, and that's not to say I'm better than you. It's just why it's different. I still have things I want to do, and so I'm working on those. If these run out, and we didn't already have a patch date for 6.4, which we effectively do because of how predictable the patches are in this game, and I didn't already know it was be in 6.4, which we effectively do. We'll get 2 live letters between now and then. I already know what's in it. I already know when it is. I can already tell you when the Moogle Tombstone event is, and what it's called, and what will be in it. So I know what my goals are, and I know how long they have to last me. I know how to ration out what I have, because this game is very predictable. For now. But if I get to where I've done all my goals, I'm going to be right there with these people. So we're just hoping that they continue to add more and more and more. And we're hoping for some sort of shakeup. But shakeups are risky. Because what people mean when they say I want them I want them to take risks. I want them to take a shakeup. I want them to take risks and land it. If they take a risk and you don't like it, it's worthless. They took a risk with Eureka, which became Bosja's Adnor, and there were people who didn't like it. And then they were really mad at the time. They put all this effort into that content I don't even like. They took a risk with Blue Mage, and if you didn't like it, we know that Blue Mage is theoretically getting updated this expansion. Why is that not 635? Give us something to do. Blue Mage would be high enough at this point. Maybe we could start to see some Ultimate type challenges. Can you clear Ultimate with a Blue Mage? I think that if we were starting to get variants of every dungeon, so we got variants every patch or every odd patch, that would help. I think if Savage had been unlocked, that would help. Or at least loosened. I think 635 has frustrated people. I think that's valid. I would remind you, we are going into FanFest season. The hype will return. We're going to get 2 live letters, and then a Moogle Tome. We're going to get a live letter, then a Moogle Tomestone event, then a live letter, then 6-4. Then we're going to be in 645. All this stuff's going to build up to a head. We're going to have 6-5, which will even have MSQ, and 655, which will have MSQ. So I think on the 20th of April, we're going to have the Moogle Tomestone event announced. And that will be 29 days before patch 6.4 on the 23rd of May. We will then go into, that would then put 645 on the 18th of July because the patches have been exactly 56 days after their main patch for all your half patches, with the exception of the 0.05, which is not a normal patch. That'll put Savage a week after the last week of May, the 30th. And then we'll go into the FanFest at the end of July. That will reveal the name of the expansion, give us a little bit to feed on. We'll get more when we do the one in London in October. 6.5, I predict being right here, which means that the Moogle Tomestone event will be 29 days before that. Then 6.55 is a monstrous patch, and then 7.0, it may be later than that. That also means in the meantime, as far as things to talk about, Yoshi P is going to begin giving interviews, and we will have our remaining 2 live letters. So going into the 23rd of May, that means that we would have live letter 76 towards the end of this month. So those are announced right before they happen. So I think that the next live letter will most likely be 14 days from now. And that'll help ease some of the tension, even though it's not content in the game. It's something to talk about. And that puts our next live letter May 12th, 11 days before the patch. Historically, these are always 11 days before the patch. That was a 2-week delay. And there was early access to factor on that math. But they are always 11 days before the patch. That was delayed. Once again, same issue. They're almost always right at that 11 days, unless they're adjusted to be something like at a convention or something like that. The first live letter is a little bit more variable. So that's what it is. But, like, World of Warcraft has been dominating in Dragonflight. Now, that does not mean they've fixed all of the bad feelings that they've had in the past. But, like, they rocked it with 10.0. They rocked it with 10.05. Looks like they're going to rock it with 10.1. Guild Wars did a great job with End of Dragons and did a great job with Living Season 1. They've got a plan moving forward. These games are cyclical. And that means you have cycles of good and you have cycles of eh. Historically, in recent history, in modern history, Final Fantasy has had good and great cycles. And it just bounces between them. And this is the first time we've had a meh. And so if you don't have a way to navigate the meh, I understand why people are frustrated. So that's what's wrong with 635. In my opinion, nothing's wrong with 635. But I can look at 635 and absolutely see why opinions outside of my own would exist. And I think they are very fair and they are very valid.